I'm Rip Esselstyn, and you're listening to the Plant Strong podcast. You've seen her on TV shows like Veep, Castle, The Rookie, and many others, and now you can see her on the new season of Frasier. Can you believe it? Frasier, which is now out on Paramount+. It's the talented actress, Toks Olagundoye. Today, she candidly shares her ongoing journey with breast cancer and the impact that diet has played on her recovery. It's coming up right after these words from Plant Strong. Plant Strong cousins. Last week, we launched our all-new personal-sized pizza kits from the Plant Strong Test Kitchen. We made these in response to all the comments that we've been receiving from people who are cooking for just one or two, or for families with a bunch of different eating habits. The cool thing about these adorable kits is it gives you a chance to make perfectly portioned pizzas for everyone sitting around the table. And there's one thing for certain. The foundation for each meal will be 100% whole grain and 100% delicious. There's 4 individual sauce packs that are included with the 4 pizza crusts, which makes it super easy to feed everyone. Now, as a test kitchen item, these are offered for a limited time, so don't hit the snooze button. Hop on over to plantstrong.com, be part of the conversation on these fun, new, hip products. We made them for you, and we can't wait to hear what you think. As the leaves are turning, I want to wish you happy October, my cruciferous cousins. As you know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And that means that here at the Plant Strong podcast, we're going to be devoting all 5 episodes on the stories of patients and the latest research and initiatives that promote a whole food, plant-based diet for the recovery and healing of this disease. There is so much science that's swirling around this topic. And so I've called upon several experts to parse out the research and equip you with the knowledge and the hope. Today, though, I'm honored to introduce you to an actress that is currently starring in the brand new season of Frasier, which debuted September 19th on Paramount+. Her name is Toks Olagundoye. She plays Olivia Fitch, the faculty head of the psych department at Harvard University, on this new season of the popular reboot starring everyone's favorite radio host, Kelsey Grammer. Now, in addition to Frasier and other starring roles in television shows like Castle and Veep, Toks is also a breast cancer survivor. She's undergone 6 surgeries to treat her cancer, along with chemotherapy treatments. 2 of her surgeries even took place when she was filming season 1 of Frasier. Here's the thing. Toks is primarily whole food plant-based. She hasn't eaten mammals for over 30 years and gave up dairy almost 20 years ago. But because there is a lot of cancer in her family, she remained diligent about all of her screenings, which, thankfully, is what caught her aggressive triple-negative breast cancer. She's honest and candid about her story because, as she says, she wants to be a service to others and raise awareness about early detections. She also wants to be a source of hope and inspiration, which is why she wanted to talk so openly about her diagnosis, and I'm super grateful for that. So, please welcome to the Plant Strong podcast, Toks Olagundoye. Today, joining me on the Plant Strong podcast, I have Toks Olagundoye. Welcome to the show. It is so wonderful to meet you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, am I correct? Was yesterday a big day for you?
It was. It was my 49th birthday.
49th birthday.
Yeah.
I love it. It was my sister's 59th birthday yesterday.
Oh my God, that's amazing. It's a very popular birthday. I think it's like one in the top 3 of most popular birthdays.
Yeah, I had an old girlfriend that was September 16th, and you're September 16th, my sister. That's about as far as I know. But
nice. Hey, listen, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Now, So you were running a little bit late today, and you were at the doctor's appointment. And the good news is, what did everything reveal today?
That I seem to be doing well on my way to, being able to say that I'm fully in remission from breast cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
had a checkup. I have several different kinds of checkups, but this one is with my oncologist, and I had a double mastectomy, so she kind of checks the area, checks my blood levels and everything, and everything looked good, but my calcium's a little high. Who knew that was a problem? So I have to have some extra scans and stuff today, and they were booking those into the computer. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
Well, what I'd love to do with you, if you're open to it, is I'd love to dive into your breast cancer, the diagnosis, how you handled, having a
Yeah.
mastectomy and finding out that you had breast cancer. And I know you had about 6 surgeries and chemotherapy. So I think our audience would love to hear about your experience with that.
Yeah.
Also would love to talk about your role in Frasier. That is super exciting.
Yeah.
And Olivia Finch, right,
That's
has
right. Yeah.
on her way.
Yeah.
Um, for starters, though, I'd love for people to kind of just get a feel for you, Toks, and where does that name Toks come from? Because I can tell you that I've never heard of it before. And I bet nobody that's a listener has ever heard of it before.
Not unless they're Nigerian, probably, or Mexican. There's like a chain of like fast food stores in Mexico called Toks.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and no, I'm not named after them. Although, listen, maybe I've never had it. It might be the most delicious thing in the world. I don't know. But I'm from Nigeria, born and raised. My dad's Nigerian, and Toks is short for Olatukumbo. And it's usually given to people not born in Nigeria. So a lot of Nigerians think that I'm not born or raised there, but I was. It's a little joke that my parents thought was funny because my mum is Norwegian. And so that, I'm a gift from across the seas in that way. So,
Oh, well, that's beautiful. Wow. If I was a parent, I would love to say, a gift from across the seas. How are you doing today? And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, as a parent. Um, have you ever been to Norway?
Oh, yes, absolutely. My mum's whole family is there, and we would go once or twice a year. My whole childhood, and I still go about once a year.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's my favorite place in the entire world. It's incredibly relaxing. It's the one place I feel truly safe. And being biracial, you can be othered a lot by family, and it's like it's the place that I feel most in tune with my family.
Hmm. I just went to Norway for spring break with my family,
Oh,
and
which
we flew into Bergen, and
that's
then
where my mom's from.
we went up on, I mean, and we stayed right on the, I think, Norwegian Sea somewhere. It was freaky. It was freaky. The mountains, the lack of humanity, the lack of traffic.
Yeah,
I was like, we got to go back ASAP.
absolutely. It's just one of the most wonderful places in
Yeah,
the entire world. It gives you a really good idea of what Earth is supposed to look like and how we're supposed to treat the Earth and each other. It's
very much so. Very much so. And it seemed to me that Norwegians, for the most part, were doing pretty well. I mean, I think it's a wealthy company. I'm a wealthy company, a wealthy country. I think it's, what is it, oil and gas that has
Mhm.
allowed it to do so well.
Yes, absolutely. And they have so much money because of it that I mean they're able to be a socialist country that really does provide
Yeah.
everything for their people, and they take in a lot of immigrants because they want to literally share the wealth.
Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the States or Nigeria or where?
I grew up mainly in Nigeria. When I was 3 and 4, we lived in England. And in I moved around a lot, but was in Nigeria for the most part. We'd go to Norway a couple of times a year. I would go from like ages of 7 to 13 every summer. I would spend a big chunk of the summer in Switzerland going to school there, to prep me for boarding school in England, which I went to for secondary school, for high school. And we always spent a big chunk of time in England too in the summer. So those were my key places that I grew up, but home base was Nigeria.
Wow. You moved around a lot. Was your father in the military or something, or what?
No, I think it's just simply by virtue of having family everywhere and being a British colony, in Nigeria, a fairly new country, especially when I was born, and everything there is very British. And so it's kind of where everybody ended up at that time. And my dad was a banker. When we lived in England, it was because of his job. And spent time in Norway because of my family. Switzerland was because my dad wanted me to speak fluent French. And but it was really just, that's tons of Nigerians, especially in my generation, spent time in England. Yeah.
And how's your French? Do you speak fluent French?
Oh, I did once upon a time. I've lived here for a very long time and have had no reason to use it. I mean, if you plopped me in the middle of a French-speaking country, I'd be absolutely fine. But if you wanted to conduct an interview with me in French, I would politely decline.
Right. The only thing that my parents taught me in French, and this is when we were like, when we would go on ski trips and we'd be going up the chairlift, and they taught us to say "Qui occupe la fromage," which was who cut the cheese, right? Yeah. Of all things.
Hey, you can say something in French.
Exactly. When did you know that you wanted to be an actress?
Gosh, not until quite late. I was always going to be a doctor. And then when I was applying to schools, I started having this recurring nightmare that I killed someone during my internship. And it was it was a huge fear of mine. So I decided, I did apply to some very good schools with pre-med programs, and I got in. And then I applied to other places where I would be able to do pre-law. And at the end of the day, I picked to go to a university where I could do pre-law, but I still wanted to do theatre, which I had started in high school. That was the first time I did it. I just thought, oh, this will be fun. And the principal of the school and the head of the drama department thought that I was very talented. And so they asked me to partake in a program that they had there, which was a baccalaureate program. It was a really amazing theatre program. And so I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I always ended up in all the, plays and things that we did. Yeah. And then in college, I took one theatre class my first semester, and it happened to be adjacent to the auditorium. And I walked out onto the auditorium, the first class, and I kind of looked out in there and I thought, oh God, I've got to do this forever. I have to. And so I changed my major, and I thought my parents were going to disown me basically, but instead they said, listen, just do your best, have a plan B, don't plan to be an actor, plan to work, in the profession in a way you can make money. So my trajectory was always that I was going to work in a, theater somewhere in New York, and then do regional theater on the side. And I got lucky enough to actually be an actor and pay my bills that way. So
you sure have. I would hope that it's exceeded all of your expectations.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And when did you land your first, let's say, role where you like, yeah, I am an actress?
God, that's difficult to say. That's difficult to say because I feel like every time I land a new role, I say that because every time I'm like, oh God, the first time was I had a professor at UMass who came to me and said, PBS is doing this series and they need a host. And I'm just they're sending this out for us to send students, and I'm just going to send you because you're going to book it. And I was like, okay. And he was right. I did. And I made a full $1,000, which was more money than I'd ever seen or made in my entire life. I was like, I'm rich. And yeah, I have to say that's probably the first time, getting paid to be, this is my first time doing television. And, it was all me and a camera and a director and a script. And I love what I do. I always have fun. And every single time it's a new experience, and every single time I feel like I'm at a different level. So
when you hear that you got that role, you got that part, and I just got $1,000 to, be the moderator, whatever it was on PBS. Who's the first person you pick up the phone and call?
It was my mom.
Your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my mom.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Who's always yeah, of course they cast you. She's not, she's never my parents are never excited. They're like, congratulations. But they kind of expect me to excel. So I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. And then what are some of the shows that you've been on that the audience members might know or recognize you from?
Ooh, okay. So I was a series regular on the show Castle. They brought me in the final season to be Castle's partner. I was on the show Veep. I actually played the Kamala Harris character on Veep.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've done guest roles on shows like NCIS and Law and Order and, those sorts of things. I did a season of The Rookie because it's the same guys who do Castle. So they wrote they wrote a role for me and said, do you want to come play? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. What else?
What about The Neighbors?
Obviously. The Neighbors is one of my favorites, but unfortunately not a lot of people watched it. But
okay.
But that was, one of my favorites of all time. I have been fortunate enough to have jobs that have really fulfilled my dreams. The Neighbors, I got to do so much stuff on The Neighbors. It was so much fun. And I got to do a lot of I got to do all my accents and be weird and wacky. And on Castle, I got to fulfill my dreams of doing all my own stunts. And, everything that I've done has brought a new thing. I got to be on Shameless, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. Veep was one of my favorite shows of all time. And they're always a new challenge, I don't know. I've been really lucky in
the world of acting, you're checking off the boxes with your bucket list.
I am. And I always wanted to do voiceover work, and I've done a lot of that.
What's that like?
It's a little surreal. It depends on what show. So if I'm doing Family Guy, I do Family Guy, Beavis and Butthead, and American Dad a lot.
No, Family Guy, Beavis and Butthead. Can you what are your voices in those?
What they do for those with me is, they've pretty much got everything done, and then when they need like 2 or 3 different characters in each episode, they'll come to me and be like, okay, we need, this character's from the South. Okay, this character's Doctor, do whatever you want with that. So I do different things for them. And then when it comes to something like Arcane, that was an unbelievable experience. It's one of the most wonderful and beautiful animated things I've ever watched. Have you seen it?
Well, I watched some of the trailers, and didn't season 2 just come out in August or something?
Season 2 is going to come out in November.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did really well. At the time that Squid Game was number 1 on Netflix, it was the show that knocked Squid Game off its number 1 spot.
Wow.
So it's based on a video game. So the people who worked on the animation are the same studio that does the video game. So it's all the same guys. They didn't shop it out to anybody, and they really cared about it. It took them 6 years to make the first season, and it's so beautifully done, and they really took their time. And it was the first time that I really felt like I could take my time in the studio and really put the amount of depth into it that I would put into an on-camera show. So that was totally different. And then, I did DuckTales. I was a series regular on DuckTales, which is another completely different thing, because it's like the tone of it is like, you're somewhere between adult humor and kids humor, so you have to walk that line. And it's really, everything that I've done is fun.
Tell me, when you're doing the voiceover work, how often do you nail it on the first try, or is it sometimes 10, 20, 30?
I mean, I'm pretty good at getting. So usually you'll do 3 in a row, and I'm pretty good at getting it in that first 3 in a row. Yeah, and if it's something that I'm not getting, I will usually, most actors don't like a line read, and I'll usually just say, "Tell me exactly how you want me to say it," and I will just mirror you, because I want to do it the way they want me to do it. So,
can you give me a line that you would do from Beavis and Butthead? Like, what I want to know what your voice is like.
I mean, it depends. Like, there's a character that I do play on that in a few episodes. I don't even remember what she sounds like now, but she's the neighbor, and I think she's really shrill like this, and she just, she's a little high strung, and she really hates them as neighbors.
Love it. Okay. And then what about Arcane? Who are you in Arcane?
On Arcane, I play Mel, and she's very regal, and she's got sort of a deeper voice, and she's very relaxed, and yeah, she's a very graceful character. So it's a little bit of a different flow for Mel.
Oh, that's much nicer than the Beavis one.
Yeah, it is. It's a little
I feel very calm right now. Okay, so let's get to Frasier, which is super exciting. And so let's start with this. I loved watching Frasier, and as you know, I think it is probably one of the most successful spin-offs ever. Yeah. When it comes to these kind of series, from Cheers, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Cheers was 11 seasons, and the first Frasier was 11 seasons.
Yes.
I mean, how unusual is that?
Very.
And then what, to your knowledge, what was the inspiration for Frasier to do another reboot almost 20 years later?
So, Kelsey was seeing all these other reboots come out, and he was like, I mean, we could do that. And he was like, he had felt like Frasier still had more life to live, that you sort of you've seen like these 2 very big parts of his life in Cheers and the first Frasier, but he still hasn't found love, and he still has all of these, he has, loose ends with his son, and, his best friend that he would love to, reconnect with. And so there are all these loose ends that he wants to tie up, and he's doing that in this final iteration of Frasier. And he was really excited to be able to do it. He loves the character, and he still puts his all into it every day. You'd never know he's been playing it for over 2 decades.
Yeah. Well, the first season was 2023 to 2024. How did you happen to get mixed up in Frasier?
So the casting director for Frasier is, you'll sort of like you'll have little fans in casting departments, and this casting director has called me in for everything he's ever done. He was the casting director for Modern Family, for instance, and I think I auditioned for Modern Family 10 times and then finally got on it, because he was like, "No, I'm getting you on here." So he went to his favorites, and I was one of them. And when I say favorites, I mean like the first batch of favorites, which I think was like 200. So the people that, like, the women who popped into his head. Yeah. And then, and initially, honestly, I got the script and I didn't even look at it. I was like, I don't want to do it, because Frasier is one of my favorite shows of all time. And I was like, if they wreck it, I don't want to be part of it. Yeah. And then they came back again, and I was like, all right. So I sent an audition in, and I thought, oh, she's kind of a fun character. Okay. And then about a month later, I had a conversation with Kelsey, and it was a lovely conversation. And I thought, well, it was nice to talk to him. was like, that's that.
Yeah.
And then they asked me if I wanted a test. Well, I did, but they couldn't get a test deal together that my agent liked. She did not think they were offering me enough. And so she came back to me and she said, listen, I think we should say no. And I was like, oh.
Mhm.
And she said, listen, if they're not valuing you now, they're never going to value you. And I had literally just stopped chemo. I had stopped chemo a week and a half before. I was right out of chemo. I was exhausted. And I thought, okay, you know what? This is just the universe's way of saying I have to rest, because I worked through my first 3 operations. I was on a show called Fatal Attraction, and they were amazing. I worked through that. I worked through my chemo. I was tired. I have a 4-year-old who was at the time 3. And I was like, okay, well, this is the universe telling me I need to rest. And so they tested, and a day after the test, I got a call. 2 days after the test, I got a call. Do you still want to be on Frasier for my people? And I was like, yes. Like, I was lying in bed, just regretting the whole thing. Like, oh God. And she said, okay, great. We've got a deal together. Can you make the table read tomorrow? And I was like, yeah. So
Wow.
that's how it happened. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that it did, because this has been probably the most special work experience of my entire life.
Well, I got to see a sneak peek of episode 1. Somebody on your team was nice enough to send me the first episode.
Nice.
that dropped September 19th. So this will have already aired, but I'm sure we can go back and watch it. And it was brilliant. You were brilliant. I was laughing so hard. Tell me, do you guys perform in front of a live audience or not?
We do indeed. We do. We rehearse for 4 days, and then we do a live one, and it's oh God, it's the most fun. It's the most fun in the world.
Did you say you rehearsed for 4 days?
We do, yeah. I mean, 3 days really, because we have the table read, and then we all go home after that because they want to rewrite everything. And then we have like 2 full days of rehearsal. And then on the 4th day, technically 4th day, because we do like Wednesday table read, Thursday, Friday rehearsal, Monday, we do our camera rehearsal. So all the camera people come in and they figure out what their shots are going to be. I don't know how they do this. They literally figure everything out in one day. They're brilliant. But a lot of these people, they've been working together since Cheers. You know, they've done Cheers. They did Will and Grace. They did, you know, so they know exactly what they're doing, but still. And then, you know, we'll have like a little like tidy up session the day of, and then we'll get into hair and makeup. We do a speed through, and then we go in and we do a live, performance in front of live audience. That's great.
You are really funny. Tell me and tell the audience, like, how would you describe Olivia Finch? Like, what's her personality like? And what does she do? What kind of, what makes her throb?
So Olivia Finch is the head of the psychology department at Harvard, and she is incredibly intelligent. She is very driven. She's absolutely an overachiever, but she is very stunted in her personal life because she spent so much time trying to get where she wanted to go. And so, you know, she doesn't have a partner. She doesn't have children. She doesn't have anything close to any of that. And she is also, she's a big old nerd. You know, the things that she enjoys doing and likes doing, like a lot of people are like, what are you doing? But like to her, it's thrilling. And because she's a bit sheltered when it comes to social situations, she doesn't really care what anybody thinks. She's this beautiful mixture of being incredibly sure of herself, but also having no idea how to navigate through social situations. She's very, very socially awkward. And she wasn't initially written that way. I brought that to her, that's all very true to who I am. So it's they've written towards it quite well, but you get to see her dating, and you get to see, I don't think she's ever really had a group of friends before who have seen her for who she is and enjoyed her. And she finally does have this group of friends, and she's really enjoying, figuring herself out through these people who really see her. And you also see her sister this season, played by my amazing friend Yvette Nicole Brown, that was my request. I was like, if we ever actually see her sister, it has to be Yvette. And she did a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant job, as she always does. And she always brings so much joy and positivity to set, which is what our set is. Our set is a joyous, positive place. And we've been so blessed to only have that kind of person come on and work with us. But you also see through her relationship with her sister that she is, I think part of why she's succeeded so much is because obviously they've got parents that have driven them very hard, but also her sister is incredibly successful, and she's just kind of trying to keep up with her, So yeah, that's Olivia.
Yeah. Okay. And is her brother Tabitha? I mean, her sister Tabitha? No,
her sister is Monica.
Okay. You have two lines that I remember from the first episode that just stick out because it was so funny. The first was, and if it's the wrong decision.
Yep.
Yes. And it'll make sense when you watch it. And then the other one is where I think you're looking at it. Maybe it was an old boyfriend that's in the shit, or a girlfriend, and he's dating a girl, and you're like, a woman that looks uncomfortably like me. That one?
I do. I remember both of them. She's a little high strung. She's a tiny bit high strung.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Do you know how many episodes are going to be in season 2?
Yes, 10 episodes, because it's streaming, so we only get 10.
Okay. Well, knock it out of the park. You guys are off to a great start. Let's talk about your breast cancer diagnosis, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Yeah.
How did that? I mean, let's backtrack for a second. You, if I'm not mistaken, in my notes and my research, you have been vegetarian for about 30 years. Is that correct?
No, it was like kind of a weird journey. I never wanted to eat animals as a kid. Yeah. So as soon as I was able to get away to boarding school, I stopped eating meat for the most part. I haven't touched a mammal since I was about 16. I still ate fish and poultry. Like about 20 years ago, I gave up dairy, which was life-changing. And then I gave up poultry. Then I was pescatarian for a long time. Then I gave up fish. And then I was fully vegan for about 6 years, which was fantastic. But then because of my diagnosis and because I'm a survivor and because so many, there are no FDA approved supplements, and so anything can go into a supplement. I am unable to get my B12 through supplements anymore. So now I eat a little bit of fish every now and then, but still no dairy, no poultry, no mammal, anything. And there's a lot of seafood I won't eat. I pretty much just stick to salmon when I do eat seafood.
Explain to me the B12. Why can you not get your B12 through supplementation?
So my oncologist doesn't want me to be taking any supplements because they're not there is
enough.
Exactly. So you might not know what's in there, and because of that, there's no quality control if there is some sort of carcinogen, something in there. The first 5 years after you survive cancer are the most important. You want to make sure that your body is as clean as possible. So yeah, I get it. But Yeah, I would rather be fully vegan if I could be.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's really interesting about the supplementation. Um, well, a great source of B12 is if you get Red Star nutritional yeast. That's basically
Is it?
the way it's grown. It has, my understanding, is naturally occurring B12 in it. So
You may have
that's
changed my life.
so that's an option for you right there, because you definitely don't want to get
Yeah.
deficient in B12.
No, absolutely not. But thank you for telling me that. That's fantastic. Okay, good.
Yeah. All right. So when were you diagnosed with your breast cancer?
So I was diagnosed in August of 2022. I went in to get a routine mammogram and they saw some calcification. They said, we want you to get, like, they're kind of 3 different levels of mammogram. So then I had to go get the next level of mammogram, which is more of like a 3D thing. And they were like, yep, definitely calcifications. I had to go in and get a biopsy. The biopsy showed cancer. And so I had to go in and get what they call a partial mastectomy, but it's just a
Lumpectomy?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took that out, but they did not. There was one side where they didn't get a clear margin. We went in 2 more times and they still couldn't get that clear margin. And my doctor was concerned about that because they didn't see any of that on any of the imaging. So she said, I would recommend you get a mastectomy on this side. And I said, listen, let's just do all of it. Let's just get a full, I don't want to worry about this anymore. I've got a small child,
What's going through your mind when you basically came back and there was some calcification or there was something suspicious? Are you worried? Are you fretful? Are you chill?
No, I wasn't worried at all the first time. I thought, okay, let me go get the second one. It'll be fine. And then they said, you need a biopsy. And I was like, okay, let's go get the biopsy. It'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And then I got the call from my OBGYN. He told me, and, I was definitely shocked. But at the same time, there's been a lot of cancer on my mother's side of the family. My mother, in fact, has cancer right now. She's got lymphatic leukemia. So it's something she can live with for a very, very, very long time. But many people have passed from cancer in my family. Many people have had it. So there was this weird sensation of, I almost relaxed. It's like I had been waiting to get cancer my whole life almost. And I almost relaxed and was like, okay, so I know what kind it is. Cool. How do we deal with this? The one time that I got upset was when I had to call my dad and tell him, because I knew it would be difficult for him to deal with. So that I got upset when I had to tell my dad. But yeah, we just got the game plan together. I talked to family and friends and everybody had their things that they were going to do to help out. Initially, I was just going to have radiation. But after they didn't get that clear margin, the second time that they went in, they also took lymph nodes to make sure it hadn't spread. It had not spread, but instead of being at stage 0, which is what they thought I was actually at stage 1. So then I moved on to needing chemo. That was the first time that I personally was devastated about it because I knew that chemo meant that I probably would not be able to have any more biological children. So I did do 1 round of IVF trying to get some eggs, get an embryo. And I was 48 at the time. So, usually at that age, you'd need several rounds in order to get something. We got 3 eggs, only 1 made an embryo. And unfortunately, that embryo didn't make it. But I at least had the peace of mind of knowing that I tried. That was the first time that I actually wept being sick because I thought, oh God. And then, my best friend from UMass, she is a breast cancer survivor. She had it about 10 years before I did. So I'd gone through it peripherally with her and I knew how hard chemo was. So yeah, I was a little devastated by that because, I wanted to be able to play with my kid and, just have energy. And as much as I'm able to rally under pretty much any circumstance, you just can't when you're on chemo. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did you have all of your surgeries and medical care?
I was at Cedars-Sinai. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at Cedars, and I had.
Is that in New York City?
It's in Los Angeles.
Oh, it's Los Angeles. Okay.
Yeah, and I had amazing care. I had very good health insurance through SAG. I was very lucky about that.
Mm.
I was very, very lucky that I was on Fatal Attraction at the time, because that actually, it qualified me. It was like through my qualification for the next year. So that qualified me for the next year of health insurance. So I didn't have to worry. It was very relieving. Yeah. And my doctor, he's amazing. He made sure that I was comfortable with all my doctors. All my doctors were female, including my fertility doctors. My surgeon was female. My fertility doctors were female. My oncologist was female. Like, everybody was female. They're all women of color. I had an amazing experience with them. They gave me a social worker, different therapists, a nutritionist. I had it all with them. I was very conscious of how incredibly lucky I was to have that level of health insurance and level of care, because I don't know how anyone gets through that without it.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, chemotherapy, how many rounds, how many weeks apart? How does that work?
So I did 4 rounds. They're 3 weeks apart. And I also was doing cold capping in order to kind of salvage as much hair as I could. And so I would go.
What does that mean? What does cold capping mean? I don't know what that means.
Cold capping is you're essentially packing dry ice onto your head.
Oh, is that painful?
I mean, it's painful for some people. I did not find it that painful. It's definitely uncomfortable. Most people do find it very painful. But like, I had a tattoo on my ribs done yesterday and I fell asleep. Like, I've got really high pain tolerance. So yeah, it can be, but it does save. I was able to save about 50% of my hair, which was, I mean, I was still able to audition. I was still able to do all sorts of stuff and feel like myself. I was very candid about the fact that I was ill. So people knew. So had I lost my hair, it wouldn't have been, but, initially I did not think that I would care. I was like, oh, well, let me just do cold capping just in case I book a job or something. But I was very glad I did, because so much is taken out of your control when you're going through treatment, and being able to look in the mirror and see some semblance of who you are is very, very helpful. And it is incredibly distressing when your hair starts to fall out. It's really, because it really does, it comes out in chunks, and it's just like you're in the shower and all of a sudden there's just like a big wad of hair on the ground, It's really disconcerting, the way it happens. It kind of makes you feel like you're dying, because your body is quote unquote failing in that way. Of course it's not. It's just, it lets go of the hair because it's trying to make sure that it's giving to all of the parts of your body that really need, nutrients and stuff. So it kind of just lets go of your nails and your hair, because it's like, you could deal with that later on, But yeah, cold capping was great. So I would go in an hour before to start the cold capping. Then the chemo itself would take about 2.5, 3 hours. And then I would stay for an additional 4 hours to finish the cold capping. And what they do is they put fresh ice on your head every 20 to 30 minutes. And I mean, honestly, by the 3rd batch, your head is completely numb. You're not feeling anything after that. And I was in a really great infusion center as well. It was beautiful. There's a beautiful view and everyone was really nice. And you kind of had your own little like cubby. So you're kind of like in your own space. And it was hard. But, the first week afterwards, your body is just like, no, thank you. I don't want to do anything, and I would really, really force myself to eat, I would get it on Thursday. Friday, I would feel great. I would feel fantastic on Friday. Saturday, I'd get a little bit of nausea and I would lose my appetite. Sunday, the nausea would get a little bit worse and my appetite would completely disappear. So those days I would literally have to force feed myself, which not many people can do. It's really hard to do.
What would you force feed yourself?
It was usually pasta, bread, just like, because that was really palatable. And, I knew it would be filling. And I would just, because the more I could get into my system, the less the nausea was. And I did not want to take the nausea medication because my body already had so much poison in it. And I did not want to add anything that I did not need to add. So I did it without the nausea medication. It's also on an incredible amount of steroids because I was allergic to, they put you on steroids anyway, but I was allergic to one of the chemos. So I went into anaphylactic shock twice because of it. So they had to keep on upping the amount of steroids I was on. So yeah, I already had so much poison in my system. I just wanted to, and I was drinking tons of water, which most people aren't able to do either. I'm really good at mind over matter. So I just was doing what I knew would help my body function well. And I didn't have any of I had ice on my fingers and toes while I was doing the actual chemo so that I wouldn't get neuropathy. And I was taking,
and for people that don't know what neuropathy is, it's basically tingling in your extremities.
Yes.
And then, do you know if you do get neuropathy from the chemo, is there a shelf life on that, or?
It's different for everybody. It can last forever. It can last for a couple of years. It's really different for everybody. But if you do they have cold gloves and cold socks that you can get on Amazon. And my cold capping person would actually put it in her cooler because hers was like an insane freezer, and she'd freeze them up for me really, really well. And I also was doing acupuncture. I was seeing an acupuncturist who was a specialist in, cancer treatment. And I was taking L-glutamine, which really, really helps with neuropathy. And that was courtesy of my acupuncturist that I knew that. I could not take any herbs at the time because my liver was already going through so much. But yeah, I just, and then I would force myself to go on walks, go outside. It was, the first week is really difficult. The second week, you feel a little bit better, but you're still very low energy. But that's when I would go back to work. And because I was doing voiceover work, I was able to do voiceover work at the time. I also had a very low immune system, so I wasn't able to be on set because of that. I couldn't really be around people. But I have a studio at home, so everybody was wonderful and worked with me through my home studio. And then the third week, you feel great, and then you go back to chemo. So.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd just like to ask you some kind of this is very personal, but I'm wondering, were you able to salvage your nipples, for example?
I was.
That's okay.
I was. So there is so some people will do double mastectomy and reconstruction at the same time. My surgeon, who is also a woman of color, I had two different surgeons. I had the surgeon who took everything out and then the surgeon who was building me back up. And so she likes to do it in 3 surgeries. And the first surgery is called a nipple sparing. And what they do, and I still don't really understand how or why it works, but they go in and they separate the nipple from the flesh on the inside before you do the mastectomy. And it sort of forces blood to the area. And then when you do the mastectomy, they put this it's like it's like you're being like you're wrapped in plastic, basically. Like if you've ever had a tattoo, it's the same thing that they'll put on your tattoo. And so you're basically wrapped in plastic so that your nipples know where to be because there's no nerves anymore, so that when you get your reconstruction, you don't have like one pointing up and one pointing down, right? So then you have to wait about 3 months and then you do the reconstruction. And it's they're both big surgeries. And but some people, the nipple sparing doesn't work. Mine did work, but I cannot feel a thing. They do have surgery now that gives you a little bit, it's a little more complicated of a surgery, can give you a little bit of feeling in your nipple, but it's nothing that is going to, it's nothing that aids in like sexual gratification or anything like that. It's just like you can feel it like you can feel your arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my surgeon said, I don't think it's worth it because it requires even more surgery. I don't want to do that to you. But I still have them. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've got implants. Do you know what kind of material they use for implants now?
Yeah. So you can do saline or you can do silicone. I have silicone. The silicone looks and feels, quote unquote, more real. The saline does not. The benefit of the saline is that if you have a leak of any kind, it's just saline. If you have a leak of any kind with the silicone, you can have a whole new issue. And you do have to get them swapped out. Like every 10 years is what is recommended by the FDA. But what a lot of surgeons will do is they'll just kind of keep an eye on it with imaging, like as you get towards that 10 years. And what they do now, so they used to, when my best friend had it done, she had the implants put under the muscle. That's how they used to do it because there's nothing there but skin once you've had a double mastectomy, right? And she had the 2-for-1 surgery. So the way I did it, I had the nipple sparing, then I had the double mastectomy, and I had spacers put in, and the spacers are a trip. So it's basically a bag of saline, and it's got an opening with a magnet around it. And they put just a little bit in, and you go in every 2 weeks and they literally pump in more saline. So you're literally getting your breasts expanded.
It's inflating. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when they do the mastectomy, they have to take quite a bit of skin when they stitch you up. So even if you're going back to where you were before, which is what I did, you have to stretch the skin out. And then once you've stretched it out that way, on the third surgery, they'll go in, and what they do now is they use cadaver skin, and they essentially, they do this during the mastectomy, before they put in the spacers. They build you essentially like it's like a cage almost with cadaver skin. And the way it's built is so that it's going to scar. It's going to end up being scar tissue, and it gives you the lining that you need at the front of the breast to hold the implant between the front of your breast and the muscle, so that you can now have it on top of the muscle instead of under the muscle, because under the muscle is, first of all, it's quite painful. You have to do a lot of physical therapy because now you're stretching the muscles as well. And a lot of women who have it done under the muscles, they will have difficulty doing, like if they do yoga, having difficulty doing like a downward dog or something, or like I have all my mobility, like you sometimes will lose mobility. I was very conscious of that. So I was doing a lot of body work. And then also the muscles can push the implants up. So they end up here after a while. When they're on top of the muscle, they actually end up kind of sagging a little bit to look a little more real, but you don't have anything in there except for that cadaver skin and the implant. Everything else is gone.
What a journey. What an absolute journey. What would you say are some of the big things that surviving cancer has taught you?
Oh my God, so much. There were definitely a lot of gifts. that came with it, I have to say. The first is that I am naturally a very anxious person. I'm naturally a worrier. I worry much less. My priorities are completely different. I have far fewer priorities. Very good at being like, that's not a problem. I can take care of that later. Letting things go if it's something I can't do anything about. And my husband was my caretaker. During the pandemic, my husband, he's a mechanic. He stopped working so that I could keep working. And because we had a young child, and he was just about to go back to work when I was diagnosed. He stayed home. And I was the person who took care of everything, all the shopping, everything to do with the house, but like everything. And he had to take that on, and it created this beautiful dynamic where we are now really equals, because he saw a lot of what I had to do. The second week after my first operation, he came in, he was like, I didn't realize how much you do around here. I just wanted to say thank you. I was like, okay, cool.
And nice to hear that.
It was, yeah. And now, we really share those duties now. We take care of our family as an equal, as equal partners, where it really made us more of a unit. It was I think that something like this is actually a lot harder for the caretakers than it is for the person going through it, because, when you're going through it, like, everyone's taking care of you, and then you're, like, it's everyone's taking care of you. And he really, he to say he rose to the occasion is an understatement. He really did. And I think it made us both appreciate each other even more. It made our marriage stronger. I mean, our marriage always was strong. We always have been very much in love and very good friends, but it added another layer to that. It also taught me that honesty is the best policy with my kid. I was honest with him about everything all the way through, even though he was so little. And so he felt involved. He wasn't scared at all about any of it. My level of gratitude, I've always been someone who comes from a place of gratitude, but my level of coming from a place of gratitude it's all encompassing now. It's in everything that I do, because I was very aware that I was so lucky not only to have family and friends who, like, my best friend came to take care of me during, after I had my double mastectomy. My family was coming in and out, my sisters, my father, my mother, my stepmother, like everybody was, we have a nanny who's with us Monday through Friday, 10 to 6 to make sure my kiddo is okay. And she was phenomenal. And I was just really blessed to have so much. I was able to do acupuncture, which is not covered by my insurance. I had so many different therapists to make sure that I was okay emotionally. I was able to do massage and body work and a lot of things that people weren't able to do, that I know made it easier for me. I was lucky to be working with people who would give me grace if it was a day that I didn't think I could, make it to a recording or something, and would let me record from home. Fatal Attraction moved around everything so that I could get those first 3 surgeries done. And the final surgery that I had, the final lumpectomy I had it the next day after that. I had my egg retrieval. And then the day after that was my final day on set. And they rearranged everything so that it would be the easiest day for me possible. Then on Frasier, I had my double mastectomy in the middle of filming the first season. And initially we had pushed it to the end when I got the job. And then my surgeon was like, it makes me nervous. It just does. Like, we can push it, but I just don't, I have a gut feeling that we shouldn't. She was just so anxious about, the fact that we hadn't seen stuff in the imaging and stuff. And so I was like, well, we've only filmed 3 episodes, so I guess I'm getting written out of the show. And I went to the showrunners and I told them, and they were like, yeah, what do you need? And I was like, oh. So then I went home that night and I got a call from Kelsey, and I was like, okay, now I'm getting fired. And he was very emotional, and he said, listen, I know how actors think. We adore you. This is your family. This show is your home. We will do everything that you need so that you are okay. We'll give you the time that I mean, working with the best people on the planet, what they did was they pre-filmed one thing that I was in. They wrote me out of, how did we do it? They shot me. Oh yeah, they pre-filmed one. They wrote me out of a second one, and then they planned that right before a hiatus so that I could get the 2.5 weeks that I needed. And then, yeah, I went back after 2.5 weeks. Yeah, everyone was just really great. And my mum was driving me to work. My husband was picking me up from work because I couldn't drive for weeks and weeks. I mean, everybody chipped in. Everybody chipped in to make it as easy as possible for me. So I realized how very, very fortunate I was. And it also, I've always been someone who, likes to volunteer, and do what I can to give back, but it was never really like a focus of mine. And now, like, anything that I can do for anybody, whether it's an organization or a friend or whatever, I will do. Because I feel like if you can do something, you should do something. And if we all did that, the world would be a much easier place to live in. And that's why I'm so candid about what I've gone through, because if I can help, one person go to a mammogram that they don't want to go to and find something early enough that they can go through treatment and live, then my work here is done,
So what would be your recommendation to women? And I know that men get breast cancer, but much, much, much less frequently. What would be your recommendation as far as getting mammograms?
So definitely get your annual mammogram, 100%. I was a little blasé about it. I hadn't had one for a couple of years because I breastfed for almost 3 years. And because I was breastfeeding, I could have definitely had one the second year, but I just didn't. I was like, I'm fine. I'm breastfeeding. Nothing else is going to happen to my breast. How that made sense in my head, I don't know. That's not true. But definitely go and get your annual mammogram. A lot of people think that they're going to be painful. They're not painful. They are very uncomfortable, kind of like as close up as you can get. Your arm is in the weird position. And then, yes, your boob does get squished between two big like metal plates. But, they only go as far as they can. They're not like, going any further. So it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because the earlier you find cancer, and so many, it's second only to skin cancer for women, but 90% of women who go through treatment beat breast cancer these days. The breast cancer treatments are getting better and better and better, and the earlier you find it, the less treatment you're going to need. First of all, like, you might just need a lumpectomy and no radiation and no, but as soon as you can get to what it is, the better. And I know that a lot of people operate in a place of, if I don't know, then it's better for me not to know, what is it? Ignorance is bliss, but that's just not true. In this case, knowledge is power. You need to know what's going on with your body so that you can figure out how to fix that. And mammograms, and, do a self-check in the shower, make sure you're seeing your gyno once a year so that they can do a check as well. Definitely, I'm begging everybody to please do that, because the kind of cancer I had triple negative, which is incredibly aggressive. And had I gone possibly even a couple of months later, I might not be here right now.
Right. I know that you're, for the most part, vegan / plant-based. Are you on any particular eating regimen within that vegan plant-based world, per the recommendation of your nutritionist or anybody?
No. So, my doctors were very perplexed because I'm so healthy. I don't drink. I don't do any kinds of drugs. I don't, I exercise all the time. I don't smoke. I'm so healthy. And they were shocked. They were absolutely shocked that I I was sick, and I mean, the one place that I wasn't healthy is that I stressed all the time, and stress, that's just as
Well,
bad.
if I could add in there too, because in watching some clips of you, I remember you saying that for almost 3 years you were getting like 4 hours of sleep a night, and sleep deprivation is brutal, brutal.
If I had to guess, that's what did it. I had, I didn't have postpartum, but I'm a worrywart, and I just worried about my kid all the time. I just always thought he was going to die in the middle of the night. It's just a thing I had, and I just could not sleep. I couldn't do it. I could not sleep. My body would not do it. And thankfully, I'm in therapy, and finally, my therapist, he'd wanted me to go on something, and I wouldn't do it because I was breastfeeding. I breastfed my kid till he was almost 3 years old, and I was just like, nah, I don't want to be putting any poison in my body because of my kid. Finally, I did go on something, which finally relaxed me enough so I could actually sleep through the night. And I love my sleep. And now I prioritize a minimum of 8 hours of sleep.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's definitely incredibly important. And another thing I didn't do actually is I didn't play enough. I was like work, and now we do family vacations all the time, even if it's just like sometimes we'll just like rent a house by the beach and go to the beach for 3 days, even if it's just something like that. It's so nice and relaxing, and I definitely feel a difference in my quality of life because of it. We have to learn. Society does not support that. It doesn't support like playing and relaxing, and it's just as important as anything else. It really is.
Where would you say you've always been until you've kind of come to this epiphany and one of the gifts you've gotten from the cancer? Have you always been a bit of a workaholic?
Oh yeah, absolute overachiever.
Where do you think that comes from?
It definitely has a lot to do with the way I was raised. Nigerians, we are achievers, period, end of story. My mother was a high achiever. She's Norwegian. She was a very high achiever. My dad went to Harvard, Yale, and MIT. That's what I come from.
I've never heard of those schools.
I know that. He's an idiot, really. But yeah, and I was never, there was no, I was born in 1975. There was no, let me help you with my homework. There was no, do you have homework today? Like, do it well, get A's. I also, was an athlete. I also danced. I also played and competed in flute. Like, I did everything all the time, and it had to be the best. And I never got any, there was never any, okay, well done, or let's go celebrate that. It was like, okay, great, you achieved that, next. So that's kind of how I did. I never learned to like stop and enjoy that I did something and congratulate myself. And it's not my parents' fault. That's just the way things were, and I think especially, being a Black girl who's going to be a Black woman, my dad knew it was going to be rough for me. My dad never treated me the way that a lot of other girls are treated. There was never anything that he told me I couldn't do or wasn't capable of, and so I did do well at everything. And so I just kept on pushing and pushing and achieving and pushing and achieving and pushing. And any downtime felt like laziness. So I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And on the one hand, yay, great, thank God, because I've gotten to a great place in my career and in my life in general because of all the pushing and the standards I have and the fact that I will surmount any obstacle and all of that. But I never learned how to relax and enjoy.
So you're approaching 50, you just turned 49, but as you're kind of, getting on in your life, who are some of the people that have been heroes that have really like helped shape and transform who you are?
My parents, definitely, the people I've spent the most time with, but also my manager has been like my second mother for the last 15 years.
Wow.
She's 3 decades older than I am, 2 decades older than I am, and I listen to her a lot. She's a wise woman. We hang out a lot, and I, take a lot of. She knows a lot more about this industry than I do. But I would say for the most part, there was an actress named Ruby Dee. She was married to Ossie Davis, and she was one of the very first, Black actresses to do a lot of film. And she was a big activist, and she was one of the most wonderful human beings I have ever known. She's very kind, very giving, very thoughtful, very intentional in everything that she did.
So you had the good fortune of working with her?
I did. We were in a show together in New York that did 2 runs in New York and 1 run in Atlanta. And I was fortunate enough that even though they replaced some of the people in the other 2, she had me come with her. And so I spent a lot of time with her, especially when we were in Atlanta. And because, I'd walk her to her apartment afterwards and sit with her for about an hour or 2. And we'd just chat, and she'd tell me these stories. But also just the way that she moved through the industry and the world. I learned a lot from her in just so much grace and graciousness, and the way that she considered others. She was not a selfish woman by any stretch of the imagination. And she really solidified in me that one of the best ways that you can be is to really be observant of those who are around you, and inclusive and considerate and caring. She made everything better wherever she was. And I think of her every single day. Every single day I think of her, every single day. Sometimes I'll be like, God, how would Miss D have handled this? How do I think she would, and then honestly, I have really curated my chosen family, the people who I am around. Like, I went out to dinner last night with my closest friends here. They are people who come from completely different walks of life. And, they're not people who I all met together. They are all kind, caring, thoughtful, happy people who are easy to be around, easy to be friends with, thoughtful, and I am shaped by those friendships, because it's a constant giving on both sides, and being, having friends who, if you can't make it somewhere, or, with what I do, that happens all the time. All of a sudden I have a job, it's, none of this like taking it personally or nitpicking or whatever. It's, oh my God, good for you. That's great. Totally understand. Or, someone could just be like, oh, I can't go to dinner tonight. I'm tired. And, the other person is like, well, I'd rather you rest. That's fine. Thank you for telling me, So being shaped by those relationships. And I guess also, honestly, my therapist. I've been with the same therapist for 11 years, and he is a big part of my life. He's really changed it for the better.
Yeah. Well, from my vantage point, from where I'm sitting in Austin, Texas, it seems like things are going really well for you, and you're in a great place, a lot of gratitude, an incredible, loving, caring husband, a beautiful son, a manager who loves the dickens out of you and is watching out for you. You've just landed on Frasier, incredible parents. Way to be. You're
Yes,
going into your 50th year. It's really wonderful. I really appreciate you coming on the Plant Strong podcast, for being so open about your journey with breast cancer. And, I want to close out with a quote that you gave. I think it was at a little press event that you did for Frasier. And you said that if laughter is medicine, then I'm heavily medicated. And we all could use more laughter, more fun, more play in our lives. So way to be.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Can you give me a virtual Plant Strong fist bump?
Yeah. Boom.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Toks.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay. The new season of Frasier is out now on Paramount Plus, so check it out. If you're anything like me and you used to be a fan of Frasier back in the day, this might be a really nice walk down memory lane. If you are on Instagram, Toks posts a lot of beneficial information on her Instagram account, so I'll be sure to link up to that so you can follow her in today's show notes. I'm really grateful that she was able to take time from her shooting schedule and speak to us during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Up next week on the Plant Strong podcast, Dr. Dawn Musalem, a little ray of sunshine, joins us from the Mayo Clinic to talk about some of the outstanding research and studies that show definitively the benefits of a whole food, plant-based diet in the prevention, treatment, and healing of a cancer diagnosis. It's an episode that you won't want to miss, but until then, always keep it plant strong. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, and Amy Mackey. If you like what you hear, do us a favor and share the show with your friends and loved ones. You can always leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're there, make sure to hit that follow button so that you never miss an episode. As always, this and every episode is dedicated to my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Anne Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks so much for listening.